There's a little bit of noise there in the background. As it is, it's not too bad. I'd say this is definitely worth servicing and giving a little clean, just to make sure, increase the longevity of its life. Welcome back to another video at Hearns Hobbies. Today you're here with myself, Kieran. For those who don't know me, I've been with the company for a little over a year now, usually working at the Hobbyman, but I've been taking on a few shifts at Hearns. And today we're here with something a little bit different. So you can see this sitting here in the corner of the camera. This is a customer's train that's actually been sent in for repair. And he sent it in with a couple others as well. So this one I've already done, and it's working perfectly fine. But it did need a bit of a service and a clean, and the usual things that tend to come up when you run your trains for a little while. They usually recommend every 100 hours of running time, then turn the Loco over and do a little service. So that's things like cleaning the wheels, adding the lubricant to the bearings and to the gears as well. Depending on the Loco that you have, you might need to take it down completely apart and just strip the whole thing and reapply all the lubricant. Or sometimes it's as easy as just cleaning the wheels, cleaning the contacts, and taking it from there. But this is a little different from our usual unboxing videos. Yeah, I'll be doing a little bit of unboxing, but this is used these are used Locos that belong to someone else. But as I said earlier, I've worked on this one last week, and this one's done now, but he does have a couple others that I need to work on in the meantime. So I'll pull out one of these now and show you what we got to work with. And this is how I received most of his Locos, apart from the one that's been kept in the box with all the original packaging and everything. Just wrapped up in a little teak towel, or microfiber towel, whatever you want to call it. But this is a Great Western 5600. You can tell it's a 5600 just by the number on the side. So if I zoom in there, you can see the 5600 number on the side of it. And this one's 5658. All the Great Western class Locos had this kind of classification. So they'd go with the first two numbers and then followed by XX or XXX, depending on the Loco and whatever number it was given at the time, or whatever numbering system was used. But yeah, so this is a 5600, nice little tank engine. Part of what gives away the Great Western side of it is the safety valve on top, but it's in a BR green. I think it's a Brunswick green, and it's got the British Railways crest on it. Nice little thing, but it needs a bit of work. So this has been used a little bit. You can tell a little bit about how dusty it is and how much it's been used and loved. But I'm going to get stuck into this and show you what I usually do to start cleaning things and try to get things serviced and running again. So I do have the test track that we have here at Hearns just out on display at the moment. I usually do a little test with the Locos just to make sure, get an idea of how they're running before I start anything, and then I can get a rough estimate of how much cleaning might be involved, or what kind of work might be involved, or even potentially if it's something that I think is worth restoring, or if it's something that I can usually get a pretty good idea of how it's going to perform, or how the service is going to go if I do the initial test. And so that's why I usually do these things. Just make sure it's on the track properly. Alright, so it is DCC fitted. It's currently set to just a default address of number 3, and you can always change that later. And if I ever get a Loco in and I'm not sure what the address is and it doesn't immediately respond to what I try, I will just usually reset it. So that's with the CV8, just set that to 8, but I've already set this to number 3 for the moment. So I've got a DCC controller here. There's no sound in this one, but it's just a DCC fitted Loco from Bachmann. So I believe it's factory fitted. So you can see it's starting to move a little bit as is. A little bit of a slow runner, but I'm not turning the power up too much at the moment anyway, so that would be why it's running a little slow. But it's relatively smooth, Not a lot of deceleration in it, but I can stop it before it gets to the end if I have to. You can see it's running relatively quietly. There's a little bit of noise there in the background, but let's just had to stop that there before it went off the end. As it is, it's not too bad. I'd say this is definitely worth servicing and giving a little clean, just to make sure, increase the longevity of its life. But yeah, there is a little bit of a noise in reverse, but that might clear up as I service it. Alright, so let's get started on the service itself. So a lot of people either don't have the confidence to do any servicing, or they don't quite know what's involved. And I'm here to tell you it's not as scary as it sounds. Yeah, you are kind of taking things apart a little bit. Or you are mostly taking things apart. Because you've got to get inside to get access to the bearings, the motor, all that kind of stuff. But it's not the end of the world. It is possible. I managed to learn how to do it. There are many videos online to learn how to do it as well. This is just another one that you can rely on and check out, see how it goes. But first thing you kind of need is definitely a cradle. So this one is from Pico, and it comes with a few other little inserts of foam just to make it easier to for different locos. So like you get take it out of the box and I can show you properly. But depending on the size of the loco, you might arrange the foam in slightly different ways. So if you've got a massive big boy or something on here, then you probably wouldn't have these end pieces of foam in there, because that's just going to prevent it from laying down. And you definitely wouldn't have this in here. But if you're working on end scale or anything like that, then this will help pad that out and keep it in the position that you need to do all your servicing needs. There are other cradles out there, and I've seen people make some themselves, but this is just one that I had on hand that's available. I'll take this bit out for now because I don't need it in there for this loco. Put this upside down in here, and so the foam does actually protect against all the details, so it stops like the handrails and that falling off or getting damaged or anything like that. And so it does come in quite handy. Might zoom in that. Now, you can see the underside of the loco now. So you can see the wheels, there's a little bit of dirt and stuff in there. It's not too bad, but it's definitely going to need a little bit of a clean and service just to keep it running properly. So this one's going to be, each manufacturer has a different way of doing it, like making things serviceable and taking things apart. The Hobby ones are pretty good and pretty easy to access. The Bachmann ones can be, but sometimes they're a little bit difficult. And so for this, I'm going to need to take out, there's usually 2 screws in this one. The first one being up here underneath, you can see the hole there where the screw's meant to be. And that's meant to hold in part of the body to the chassis. And then the other one is underneath this coupler here. So you can see that screw sitting there. And I will have to pull out the coupler just to make sure that I can get access to that screw properly. Otherwise I risk breaking the coupler off. You can already see, so this one had a loose roof on it. So that one's come off while it's been upside down, but that's okay. We'll put that back on later. And you can see a little bit of the cab detail in there too. But for now, I'll put this back down here. While I take this off, I can probably talk to you about the way that the tools and things that you might need for something like this. So I have a big toolbox that I tend to use for a lot of the services, just because I've got a lot of tools. From screwdrivers to side cutters to wire strippers and that, if I have to do any soldering. I even have a little soldering iron in here as well. And so I usually take this to work with me every time I go in for a shift. There have been occasions where I don't have it, but for the most part I will have it with me in case I need to work on something, or someone brings something in and I need to, I can get it done in the same day, or if it's just a quick thing, or if I can get it turned around in the space of about a week or 2, that's fine as well. But yeah, so let me pull out some of these tools. One of the most important things is a good pair of pliers. So these ones are just a pair that I had lying around, but they come in handy quite a fair bit, especially for things like this. So when you want to try and take off this little NEM pocket here, you've got to try and do it without breaking this triangle bit. So I'll show you there in the light. This little coupler is that little piece of plastic between the triangle and the rest of the pocket is so thin and easy to break. So just want to make sure that you're careful with that. Other thing that's important is getting something to hold all your loose bits in that. So like your screws, when they come undone, you want to make sure that they can't go anywhere, and they're not likely to roll away at all. For today, I'll be using this silicone mat, and so it does have these little grooves in it that will prevent anything from leaving its boundaries ideally. So I'm going to put this little coupler piece here, and I'll put this NEM coupler there as well. I might even put them up here just to make sure that they're in the spot and out of the way for any screws that I will be taking out as well. So on that topic of screws, I have a screwdriver. For some locos you might want something with a longer handle or a longer shaft, just because a lot of the screws can be very inset into things like the tenders or the bodies or whatever, but this one does most of it pretty easily. So I've kept it around, and it's got the extra little locking mechanism if I need to spin it and in one direction and not the other. Comes in handy if I've got any particularly tight tolerances or areas that I'm trying to get into. So I got two of these. This is the one that I use most commonly because I find it more common to have either flat heads or Phillip heads on locos. And there's a number of different sizes, so I can work from a number of different screws that are used on N scale all the way up to HO, and your O and your G as well, but most of the time you'll use one of these. Most of the time I'm usually just working on HO or N, but I have seen a few G scale things before, and usually the screws don't go beyond much like this size. I do also have another pair of pliers. This one I got from a camp when I was younger, and they're actually spring loaded, or these are also spring loaded, but these are just a little bit higher quality, and it's a bit of a multi-tool, so there's a couple other things on it too. And I've got a Swiss Army knife as well that I use from time to time for these sorts of services. But the little grooves on this help to keep any little screws in place or anything that I don't want moving around, whereas my other ones are just a cheap one there's no grooves in it. Your screws will go flying out, or they can potentially go flying out, and then you lose them and you've got to try and find another screw. These I use for like if particularly fiddly work, or anything that I want to stay in one place and make sure that it definitely stays there. So here's my Swiss Army knife as well. This one I got from Switzerland back in 2017. I've got some brushes, so when wheels are particularly dirty, especially if they're on old locos, so like your Lima, Triang, anything like that someone brings in and they just want it cleaned. Cotton swabs. These cotton swabs here, just any kind of cotton swabs will do the trick. I got a big pack because they were on special at the time, and a bit of isopropyl alcohol. It will take off any paint on the body as well if it's been weathered post-factory, or for whatever reason the bond with the paint is just not that strong. It can take the paint off some of your locos, so just make sure you don't get a lot on the body, or try to avoid getting any on the body. But most of the time it's fine, it won't hurt anything else, and it'll clean up those wheels perfectly fine. And especially if you're using the 99% alcohol concentration, it just evaporates away and you're not left with any kind of residue behind at all. I've also got some lubricants as well. So this one's a Pico Power Lube, and this one comes in handy if I've got locos that pick up power through the axles, or so like if they're a split chassis loco and they pick up through the axles, I'll use the power lube on the bearings there instead of using something like just your light oil, which brings me on to the Woodland Scenics oils. So I've got a light oil that I tend to use for most locos, and this does the trick quite well and it will help it last. I have heard of people using ultralight oil for cleaning, but it usually doesn't last too long, and so I tend to go with the light oil over anything else. And then I've got the gear lube as well for your gear train and anything like that. I do also have some crocodile clips with some wires just in case I need to test the motor separately. In this case I don't need to, because we've just seen it works perfectly fine as is. So it'll just be a bit of a clean and that today. I don't have to. Sometimes they can come in handy if you're cleaning the wheels, you want to hook up the power directly to the motor, and then just run it as is. And I might do that in a minute, but we'll get to that later. So I'll start off with taking this screw off now that I've been talking about. So hopefully I've got the right bit in to get enough grip. So unfortunately a lot of my hands are in the way at the moment, and so once that is nice and loose, I will grab the screw and put it down there on the mat, and then this body should be free to just come off without any issues. So give it a little pry around. There we go. Alright, so you can see it's now loose. Take the body off, and there we go. So there's a bit of weight inside that body, but we don't need that right now. So this has just a 3-pole motor inside here. You can tell a little bit when looking at it. So there's your 1, 2, and your 3. One of them is actually marked, so there you go. You can see that one's come around again. So it's just 3 poles. It's just a regular kind of motor that Bachmann tend to use. They have greased it up a fair bit, so I might have to take that off, but that's it as it is at the moment. And you can see the DCC decoder in there too. So this is a DCC Concepts one, just an 8-pin decoder, and it's got a big stay alive on here. So this is one of their older decoders from probably when they were in WA, instead of when they moved to England. But yeah, get an idea of what's inside of this. This has got a massive steel block that kind of helps with the weight of it, and so it will help it pull larger loads if the heavier the weight. Yeah, you don't want it to be too heavy because then the motor might struggle, but then ideally what the manufacturer is meant to do is upgrade that motor so that it can deal with the weight of the loco and whatever else it has to pull. Doesn't always happen, sometimes it doesn't work out too well, but in this case it seems to have worked out fine because the loco's still alive, the decoder's still there, there's no, nothing appears to be fried or anything. All the wires are in place. I can see black up here, red down there. Yeah. So I'll start off by giving the wheels a little bit of a clean. So I might actually, usually I try to take the base keeper plate off for this. So there's a screw here and a screw underneath here that would do it. But because this is Bachmann and I believe it might even be hardwired, so a lot of your modern, unfortunately I don't have an example for you right now, but a lot of your modern locos, the base keeper plate has plunger pickups, and so, or like plunger pickups wired into the plate, and then the wiper pickups on the wheels. So you can see the wiper pickups on the wheels there, so that means this isn't a split chassis loco, and you can also tell just by looking at the top here. So if this was split chassis, there'd be a slice down here and some screws holding it all together along the whole block. But this uses wiper pickups instead, and so I might have to take it off just to get to the wipers themselves. But the Bachmann design is not always the most ideal. because there is a screw hiding underneath here, and you can see in the past where someone else has tried to take it off, they have actually broken part of the brake rigging, but most of the time people don't notice that sort of thing. You can just glue it back together later if you really want, but I'm going to leave it as is for the moment because it's how I received it, and I'll likely end up breaking it again if I try to take the screw out anyway. So the easiest one to work with is going to be whatever isn't powered, and so in this case it happens to be this. If you do have a tender engine, it can sometimes be easier to clean the wheels because they have your wheel, a set of wheels back here, or like 3 sets of wheels that pick up power from the track and don't actually rotate when power is applied. So you can hook up a couple crocodile clips like I have over there and power the main driving wheels and get them to rotate as you're cleaning, and that can speed up the process of the service and make it a little bit easier as well. So grab out some cotton swabs, grab out your IPA, and you just want to get a little bit on the there. Try not to overspray too much onto everything else around me, and you just want to start wiping. So you'll see the result a little bit better when I've finished with the wheel. You'll definitely see the dirt that's coming off it. Sometimes you'll need to give it a good rub in one particular spot if it's really dirty. And I know these wheels up the back here don't do any kind of pickup work for the Loco, so cleaning them shouldn't affect the power getting into it. But often what happens is wheels, even on like your rolling stock, will get dirty, and yeah, you can clean the track and everything, you can clean the driving wheels and that, but if your wheels are dirty on your rolling stock, then you're going to find you're having the dirt just goes straight back onto it, more or less. So you can see from the end of that cotton swab there just how much dirt has come off immediately. So that wouldn't have been doing it any favors, but now that once we get it all off on all the wheels, it should be much more reliable. I'll do the wheel on this side too. And so I am just kind of like slowly rotating this cotton swab as well. So you can see parts of the dirt coming up from where it's touched the wheel as I've been rotating it. But this one isn't too bad so far. So you can see this side it was a little bit dirty, but it wasn't quite as dirty as this side over here. And so that's likely to remain the same on the rest of the Loco as well. So I'll go clean up the rest of these wheels too. I might even hook up some power to it. So just to speed up the process a little bit, I'm going to hook up these wires. Come on. Now this is the tricky part. So I might hook up. Sometimes I will check the power that's going through it if I'm in doubt. Then I do have a multimeter for that sort of purpose. But in this case I don't need to. I shouldn't have to worry about that too much. But it should be that side there. Oh, because I'm powering the motor directly. Okay. So I might just switch this over to DC power so that I don't end up with power going through it unnecessarily on DCC. And so you can actually run some of your DCC locos on DC, especially if you're powering the motor directly like this. I probably would recommend using DC instead of your DCC. But if you do have the pickups that you can use, then that's useful as well. Then you can just hook up your wires directly to that, and then you can use either DCC or your DC power. So that there. So I managed to figure out that that does do the power. Might try to hook that up to that there. Give this a little quick test to make sure that it's moving. If I turn this power up here on the DC controller, it should turn the motor. Alright, that plan failed. So I'm going to try and take the base keeper plate off, and then I can get better access to the wheels and that sort of thing. So in this case, where ideally you want access to the wheels like I mentioned earlier, but you don't always get that kind of luxury. Unfortunately, not every manufacturer thinks ahead with their designs. So I'll grab that screw here with my trusty pliers. You can use tweezers as well. Tweezers are also a good option, especially if you're trying to get into tight spaces. Any kind of fine tweezers will do the trick. Yeah, so this is going to be the tricky part, trying to get that screw underneath here to come out. Unfortunately, sometimes things that weren't meant to be glued at the factory did get glued at the factory, and so then you end up in situations like this when you're trying to take things out. But there we go. Alright, I got that one out now. So that is just, you can see it's just loose to move, and so I am able to access this screw in here now, which is the last bit that I need to get full access to the wheels and shafts. Now with your oils and that, some of them do come, especially like your Woodland Scenics, come with a needle bit on the end, so you don't always have to get that kind of access to your wheels to get that oil in there, but it usually helps. And then we should have it free. So yes, you can see, if I show you this here, you can see it's hardwired to the base keeper plate, and so yeah, you do have to be a little bit careful with this one, just because you don't want to break that wire and then have to resolder it again. It isn't the end of the world if you have to, but it's just a bit of extra work. This is a good opportunity to show you the pickups here actually. So you can see the difference between them all at the moment. So I haven't cleaned these yet, but this one here is a little bit clean, not too bad. It could be better. And then these here are absolutely black, covered in like oil and dirt that they've just picked up from running around on the track. So I will give them a proper clean in that as well. Take this pair of wheels out and I'll give that a little clean with a paper towel later. But yes, so with that we do have access to everything that we need. Little bearing here is stuck, so I might try to put that spring down there so it doesn't go missing. Your springs are going to be the worst thing to go missing because they will fly off in whichever direction they want and you'll never see them again. Put that down there as well, just with the other little pieces, and then I can get to cleaning the wheels properly. So do it one wheel at a time. I might even grab a bit of a cotton swab and just clean up the axle as well. So that little bit here, very dirty. Your cotton swabs are really good at getting into tight spaces like this, so I tend to use them quite a bit. There's no IPA on this currently, it's just a bit of cotton soaking up any loose bits of lubricant or anything like that, and yeah, so you can see all the dirt that's come off there, especially on this little cotton swab up here. Very dirty little thing. But we'll get on to cleaning the actual wheels now. So I'm just rotating this slowly, both the wheel and the cotton swab in my hand. And you can see a little bit of the dirt coming off there. It's gradually getting much more shiny than it was before. Much better. So you can see there is still a little bit of black bits left on that gear there, and I will clean that up in a second, but I'll get around to it in a minute. So for those of you who have never seen the inside of a Loco before, or how they pick up power from the wheels, from the track onto the wheels and then up to the motor, usually the most popular way to do it is these wiper pickups. They've been used for quite some time. I think they've been around since probably Hornby Triang kind of days, if not maybe a little bit later than that. But they've been proven to be a useful way to pick up the power and all that, to get it from the wheels up to the motor and back out to the wheels again. So they're quite a common thing. There are other ways that I've seen it done before. Like I mentioned earlier, split chassis locos will have a pickup through the axles instead. And so you can tell if it's split chassis by the split that's down the middle. And if it does that, then you do need the power loop to change the lubrication in it. Because you'll want something that will conduct electricity. Whereas your woodland scenic stuff, it won't conduct that electricity. It's not meant to, because you're usually not trying to isolate different parts of it together, and it's just easier if everything is isolated. Yeah. So you can see me cleaning up this one a little bit now. So that will have improved the pickup qualities greatly. And it might even, sometimes it will increase the speed of the Loco as well. Just because you get dirty pickups, you're not getting as much voltage through there. And you end up voltage or current. And it can, once you start running it again, it's a lot more smooth usually, and sometimes even quite a bit faster. So, new side here. This bit here. So, again, and you can really see how the IPA just like cleans that up properly. It's amazing, right? From something so black and dirty to now being almost like new. Sometimes you might need to use something a bit more abrasive if you're really struggling. For your contacts and that, you tend to use you can use a fiberglass pencil, and that will clean it up really nice and shiny, and just increase the longevity. I might do that on this one just because I'm finding that the alcohol isn't doing quite the job I'd like it to. It's cleaning it up a fair bit and getting rid of all the loose stuff, but I reckon a fiberglass pencil will finish it off quite nicely. Now, the fiberglass pencil I have came in a set with a few other pencils. So there's a plastic one, there's a steel one, there's a few others. You can, if you have to use a steel one, you can get away with just using a steel wool, something that you use for like usually cleaning dishes or anything like that. But I got one that's in a pencil form, and it's nice and easy to use. So I'll show you this one. So I often see people using this for cleaning up armatures and that inside the Locos, especially on older things. But you can see it's cleaned it up a little bit nicer than the alcohol was able to do just immediately. So you can see a little bit of dirt on my pencil from where I've used it before on other Locos. But that's fine, it's just going to clean it up. And I can always clean up the pencil as well with a bit of IPA. But yeah, alright, that's enough of that pencil here. Put that back over here. Now let's have a look at where the surfaces will sit. So like where the axles sit in the... Sometimes it's bearings and that. In this case, you can see by the wheels over here, there are no bearings involved in this mechanism. It's just straight axle into there. I might give these a little bit of a clean out with the cotton swab as well. So grab that there, just shove it in there, and give it a good wipe. There we go. All right. So sometimes, depending on the Loco, I will also take the gears out and give them a good clean. In this case, it's probably not 100% necessary, but I might clean out just that little bit in here. So if I zoom in there, you can see a little bit of grease and stuff that's there. That shouldn't be hurting it too much, but I might just clean it up a little bit anyway, just to make sure it's all good. So for this I tend to use a paper towel. Now we don't need a lot of paper towel, it's just because we're cleaning up only a little bit of it. Okay. Just clean up that little extra overspill there. Trying to get into there a little bit too. So this holds the center wheel in and gives it that little bit of springing that it needs. And so it's important that this is also clean when I put it all back together. For this I can use just a cotton swab as well. That in there. Twist it all up. Get all that dirt on there. And get it out, ideally. There we go. Alright. There we go. So, I should be more or less done with the cotton swabs now. Put that off to the side to make it easier to get in. Bring this across. So this gear here is still a little bit dirty, so I'm going to give that a little wipe down. Ideally with the clean side of the paper towel. Might even get in there with my tweezers just because the dirt is really set in there. There we go. Alright. That's that all done. Alright. Next, the fun part, putting it back together. So this little bit came out of here. Very poorly, but it's there, I promise. And that goes back in to here. And I will give this a little clean too with the paper towel before I put it back in. So just clean the axle up there. Alright. That's back up there. So you can see from the... It is a little bit of a messy process because I end up with tools everywhere and other bits of dirt and paper towels and that. But that's okay, it's all part of the fun. As long as you can find everything in the end to put it all back together properly, yeah, it should be fine. So that there, and that there. There's the wheels back in place. You can see they're much cleaner now than they were when I first took them out. And so I'm going to add just a little drop of, not gear lube, just a little drop of light oil onto all of the bearing surfaces. So zoom in there. And a little drop is all I need. So there's, you may have barely seen it there. There's a little drop on the end there. That's in there. I might just do a little bit along the whole thing, just in case. Onto the next one. Little drop over here where it's going to be touching the chassis. Little drop over here where it's there. And then a little bit over here where it will be rotating in the little support that it has. Same with this one here. Drop over here. Drop over here. And that should be that one done. And then last but not least, I want to make sure this one's nice and free rolling too. Drop there, just drop all around. Might even run it up and down there just to make sure that it's nice and well lubricated. There, that should provide enough free rolling for it. So while I'm in here, I shall also do a bit of gear lube. This I apply directly onto the gear itself. So this one's again the Woodland Scenics one. Nice little needle nose there that's really useful for applying in tight places. Most of the time once you get into the gears there's not a lot of tight places, but it's there. It's a handy tool. So I'm just going to cover this one in a fair bit just to make sure that it lasts. And that should be good to go. Alright. Now with that all back together, Pickups have been cleaned, everything there. I've put the base keeper plate back on. There we go. Alright, so put that back onto here. That there, that there. So, one screw down here, just to make it easier for you to see and even easier for me to see. I'm going to put that in there like that, with the little trusty tweezers. And this in here over there. Alright. Now that's going in. Try not to over tighten it, just to avoid damaging the threads, both on the screw and on the little shaft bit that accepts it. Of course, do a little check just to make sure your wheels are still rotating as well. That's all good. There we go. Alright, that's nice and tight. Wheels are in there nice and solid. You can feel a little bit. So it's probably a little hard to pick up with me on the camera, but as I rotate these wheels a little bit, I can feel that that gear here is meshing with the gears inside, which is what we want. So put that back down here, hook it back into place. And it's usually easier to do one side and then the other. So there's one there. This one might not be too easy to see. There we go. All right, got that one there. And then pull that one out a little bit just to push it in properly. Base keeper plate back on, brake rigging back on. Just one more screw to add down here. Now this one will be a little bit tricky because it's got a tiny hole in it, but bring that down there. There we go. All right, that's all back together. Now, before I put this back together entirely, I'll do a little quick test and make sure it's all still good to go. All right, so change it back to DCC power, still set to number 3, and I'll just do go forwards. Sometimes you just gotta, it might be the fact that the body's off, the motor's a bit more loose without the body on there. So I might just put that body back on and see how it goes from there. But other than that, there's not any concerning smells or burns or anything like that. I might add a little bit of oil to some of the gears. So if I'm really worried about the gears, I'll add a little bit of light oil into here as well, just to clean the surface of it and give it a bit of something to work with when it's trying to run. Yeah, you want the gear lube to be on the gears itself, but on the bearing surfaces, yeah, light oil is ideal. Is that there? Right. Yeah, so the motor is a bit loose in there without the body on, so I believe it should fix up once I put that body back on there. I'll add a fresh drop of gear lube onto here as well. There we go. So that's probably more than enough. Really only needed a little bit, but I like to make sure things are good to go. Alright. Go. Alright. Give it another little test. And so I'll go forwards. So it'll take a little bit to get it going, but there we go. And then in reverse, try that instead. Anyway. So there's that. It's time to put the body back on. So I've got to make sure I don't catch this on any part of the bodywork. I believe this was just kind of shoved into the smoke box there when it came out. But there we go. That bit's in there, that bit's all in there. Make sure it's all lined up properly. Heard the click a little bit. So that's there, that's there. I got one last screw to put on to get the body there. Again, usually there's 2 screws, or sometimes there's 4 screws on a lot of these models. That's usually the standard. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. And then other models will even use clips instead. I'm not a great fan of working with clips, but I recognize them as a necessity for some models out there. Now that that's all done, right, body's back on, everything should be in there nice and together. And do a little test of the running now. You can see, okay, going backwards and going forwards as well. So there is still a little bit of clicking in forward, so I might investigate that. But for the most part, it appears to be okay. The wheels appear to all be in alignment, so that's fine. And then I might add just a little drop of light oil onto the... So just a little drop should do, just over here. Again, just the light oil should do. You don't need much more than the light oil. Here, here, and here. Alright. Now that's all back together. Yeah. There you go, it's not clicking so much anymore. Sometimes it just takes a little bit to run in. It can take a little bit of running in once you've finished doing the service. And I think that might be the case in this, for this Loco. Just because you're more or less redoing the whole thing that the factory did from start to finish. And send it forwards. There you go. So you can already see it's improved a little bit and it's running just in the short space here with the test track. But that appears to be all good. And once I put the roof and cab back on, should be just about good to go. So that's about all that I have here for you today. I hope this has been interesting and educational. Obviously there's many ways that you can do it. There's not necessarily a right or a wrong way to do it. This is just how I do it. But it gives you an idea of exactly what goes into it and what kind of work is done when repairs are booked in and that with us here. But yeah, that's all I got time for. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope to catch you next time for something else interesting. Alright, see you next time, guys.